A sigh of blissful contentment loosed from Lumia's lungs as she snuggled into her bedroll for the evening, clutching her latest read in her hands. The travel from hence had been arduous. Countless hours spent trudging through the snow and wind in search of beastly creatures, but such is the life of a road warden. While the company of her fellow road wardens had helped to at least stave off the loneliness of travel and offer a few moments of lighthearted fun, she was weary from their journey and in dire need of some alone time. Here in the cozy burrow of her tent, Lumia would find the quiet reprieve that she so desperately sought as she settled in to do some reading. Dim light swathed her makeshift lodging in warm tones as she used her magic to illuminate the space just enough to comfortably read, but not enough to penetrate the canopy of tents surrounding hers. Tonight she would fall back into the thirst of night, which she had been ravenously consuming at every opportunity. Enemies to lovers was by far her favorite literary trope, so the story of a vampire falling hopelessly in love with a hunter that was her sworn enemy had understandably captured her attention. She smiled to herself as she found her place at the next chapter and began to read. Just as Lumia was becoming engrossed in her tale, the delicate sound of paper fluttering through the night air caught her attention. The disturbance of the atmosphere sent notes of vanilla and the musk of old parchment drifting through the small space of her tent, inciting a tangle of conflicting emotions in her chest. Fear, curiosity, and something akin to excitement danced beneath her skin as she fought every instinct to turn her attention to the Book of Deities that was sitting just out of reach. Since their first encounter in the shack, Lumia had learned a few valuable pieces of information about the magical artifact, but very little about the proprietor himself. She now knew that the book functioned as a sort of one-way mirror that allowed him to see her, and that he could speak to her by writing on its blank pages. Much to Lumia's chagrin, rather than using this tool to communicate anything of real import to her, he had made it his personal mission to rib her relentlessly about anything and everything, as if she were his nightly entertainment. Not exactly the sort of behavior that one would expect from an alleged deity. Lumia stubbornly kept her gaze trained on the pages of her novel, unwilling to yield any more of her energy to the infuriating being that she knew was reaching out to her. Just ignore him. Nothing good can come from engaging, she thought to herself, in an effort to bolster her morale in this silent war of attrition. Moments ticked by at an agonizingly slow pace as she fought to refocus on her book. Her vision passed sightlessly over the words in front of her, again and again, as she struggled to wrest control of her mind. Having spent her life in the service of mourning, a deity who strongly cautioned against knowledge that could result in harm, Lumia knew better than anyone how dangerous curiosity could be, and yet she found herself hopelessly drawn toward the thrill of engaging with it, with him. Recognizing finally that any attempt to actually concentrate had been dashed upon the rocks the moment that she heard it open, Lumia slammed her novel shut and cast a cautiously inquisitive glance toward the mischievous book lying at her side. There, in the swirling and ostentatiously ornate script that could only belong to him, she saw the proprietor's message written on a blank page. "Another enthralling evening spent with your fictional lovers, I see. Interesting selection for a woman of the cloth." Lumia rolled her eyes, steeping her voice in sarcasm as she whispered snarkily, "Aha, taunt and tease poor Lumia over her choice of literature. I do not value the opinion of a man that has nothing better to do than spy on me at odd hours of the night like some common lecher." The book did not respond immediately, as if it were amused and taking the full measure of her words. Lumia fidgeted anxiously, impatience creeping like fingertips down the length of her spine. "What is wrong with me?" she thought to herself. "Why am I even responding to this?" Several seconds passed. Beginning to think better of the situation, Lumia was on the verge of reaching over to close the book when words began to appear. The text rose languidly and without urgency to the surface of the paper, ink saturating the page in a tortuously slow scrawl until his response was clear. I could taunt and tease you in other ways if you'd prefer. Lumia's eyes widened, a surprised thrill racing through her before cresting into an odd tingling sensation deep within her shoulder blades. A sudden waft of air lightly tousled her hair as her eyes snagged on a large shadow rising on the tent wall in front of her. She whipped her head around in fear, ready to face whatever malevolent force had surely just accosted her, only to be confronted with a face full of downy feathers? What? Lumia gaped, momentarily stunned. Angling herself to get a better look, the realization of what was happening began to sink in. There, shyly unfurled behind her tensed shoulders, the arches of 2 wings hung in repose. Her wings. She took in the tufts of white that glittered with iridescent shades of angelic pastel hues and muttered, "You've got to be fucking kidding me." Accepting the fate that she knew awaited her, she slowly, begrudgingly turned her head back to the book, a mortified flush already rising into the apples of her high cheekbones. Did you just sprout wings? This is too good. Who knew that pushing your buttons could be so rewarding? P.S. They teach you to talk like that in the convent, sister? Lumia frowned angrily, knowing that the proprietor had just been served the ultimate opportunity to jeer her on a silver platter. This occasion should be a joyous one, as it was common to eventually manifest wings during their lifetime. Lumia had hoped that one day she might also gain her own means of flight, but had imagined them appearing during an epic battle or some other significant moment, not while getting bullied by a counterfeit deity. She protectively curled both wings around the front of her body, as if to shield against the embarrassment of it all, and delicately ran her fingers over the newfound plumage. She could feel her irritation rising as she spat. This is just as much of a surprise to me as it is to you. It's not as if I would choose to share such a hallowed event with the usurper king of the underworld. The stress of your presence must be negatively affecting me. She pouted. I'm not sure if I should feel insulted or flattered that I affect you at all. Lumia scoffed. Knowing you, I'm sure that it will be the latter. She could practically feel his laughter radiating from the page. I am thrilled that you're getting the hang of this. I like it when you punch back. At that, Lumia began to pensively chew on the inside of her cheek, realizing that punching back was unbecoming behavior for a woman in her position. This was yet another addition to her never-ending list of clerical shortcomings, right behind summoning the devil, reading smut, and having a potty mouth. Even so, she did enjoy their little spars, perhaps too much. As if sensing that she'd turned inward and was beginning to drown in her own thoughts, script appeared rapidly on the next page. Cheer up. I suppose they might be considered cute if you're into that sort of thing. Upon reading his response, Lumia's wings took on a life of their own, flaring proudly behind her as if they were basking in the compliment. Whose side are you on? She muttered in frustration, as she quickly drew them back in. Allowing them to reach their full extension would send her tent crashing to the ground around her and wake up her companions. Once she felt confident that her traitorous appendages had been contained, she looked back at the book. I think they like me. She schooled her features into a look of practiced contempt and asked, Do you not have more important things to do? Crying babes to snatch in the night, elderly folk to terrorize and prey upon? Whatever else it is that the boogeyman of Serendipitous does in his free time? For you, I have all the time in the world. Besides, I am an excellent multitasker, and the baby burgling isn't scheduled for at least another 2 hours. Lumia's mouth fell open in horror. A joke? I fear your estimation of my character is worse than I imagined. As you get to know me, I'm sure that will change, however slightly. That implies that I will continue speaking to you long enough to become acquainted, which is a bold assumption on your part. She gave the book a pointed look. Oh, Miss Lumia, I have no doubt that you will. Sleep tight. With that, the Book of Deities closed itself suddenly, and the magical light that Lumia had created earlier was simultaneously dispelled, casting her into darkness. She gave an indignant huff at the abrupt ending of their conversation and consequent dismissal of her sorcery. Who does he think he is? A silly question, she realized. He is the new king of the underworld, a mysterious and dangerous entity that is not to be taken lightly. Lumia's blood chilled at the reminder as she turned to snatch up her backpack, hefting it momentarily in the air before pivoting to drop it lightly on top of the book. You'll not be spying on me while I sleep. Lumia relaxed back into her bedroll, pulling the covers high over her face to block out the chill. Despite her best attempts to spirit her wings away, she was not yet able to master them, so she tucked them in as close to her body as she comfortably could. As she finally drifted into slumber, a phantom breeze whispered across the delicate feathers, causing her to shiver.